to have a number one hit song with Sam would be playing over and over, and the brothers couldn't ignore it. Now the world will never know. Wow. It's reminiscent of a missed Kiss opportunity. I always felt they missed the boat when they were taking off their makeup. If Lick It Up had come with a cover such as The Creatures of the Night with the four faces, and the way you saw the faces was by scratching the makeup off like a lottery ticket. Remember, there was no internet. Every fan would have bought 2 copies, one to see the faces and the other one to keep unscratched. But Dave was right. 2 egos in 1 bowl. You guys should put together a David Lee Roth quote book. And one of my all-time faves is when he says, money can't buy you happiness, but you can park the yacht and walk on over. Love the show. Awesome. Tim Nora. Okay, well, Tim, this is what I have to say. I don't think Sammy would have ever goaded the crowd to chant for Dave during his set, because I don't think Sam wanted I don't think he wanted to draw attention to Dave during his stage time. What do you think, Dave?
No way.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Sam's ego would not allow for the crowd to start chanting David Lee. No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my friend. No way.
No way.
It's true. Letter number 25 comes from a guy that has no words here. He's a millennial, and he's Welsh. That's what he says. Hey, guys, loving the podcast. He says, hey, guys, loving the podcast. Sam and Dave tour episode was particularly hilarious. Shout out to your Welsh listeners. Apparently, I'm not the only one. Also, to your millennial listeners, listening to your mailbag. Apparently, I am not the only one of those either. Maybe I'm the only Welsh millennial, though. And on the topic of millennials, I have to ask you, how do you feel about Wolfgang's engagement with social media? I don't want to pile on the guy, but he seems like he's making a mission to interact with these nerds that talk shit about him. I can see the sense in sticking up for yourself, but the fact is he hasn't released anything, only occasional clips, and that's not the same thing as releasing music, and his only output seems to be trolling after other trolls. When Axl was marinating Chinese democracy, at least he had the good sense to shut up and keep his head down. What do you think of Wolfgang, and do you think his tactics of picking fights with internet nobodies does him any favors? Well, Mr. Welsh Millennial, I think he's great on social media in one way, in the sense that he's answering questions from the fans, like we mentioned earlier in the Van Halen news segment. However, he gets into fights and entanglements. I got to be honest with you, I can't believe it. This is not a way to make friends and influence people, for sure. I think being active on social media is great and healthy, but you got to be selective. What do you think, Dave?
I do agree with you. You know, we pretty much beat this into the ground earlier.
Yeah.
You know, you got to pick your battles, and you can't just be responding to everybody who says something bad about you, because, man, you'll be busy for a long time. You just got to let that stuff roll off you and move on.
That's right. Well, Dave, this 26th letter comes from Jim Von Voss from the Van Halen. He says, good morning, Dave. First, I'm a huge fan. I've been listening since the beginning, and I started the June podcast, and I think that Dave Marconi may have mentioned my Van Halen, and I play guitar. We are Halen CT on Facebook, as Dave Criblay mentioned, but our real name is just Halen. I just wanted to see if Dave ever made it out to our show, and I think he lives in Connecticut, as we mentioned in previous show, and I think I would have recognized him, but my eyesight isn't what it used to be. If he did, I hope he had fun. We don't dress like Van Halen. I mean, we are all in our 50s, but we try to play the music correctly. We do a full night of Van Halen, 40-plus songs. I don't think any other tribute does that. We throw in deep cuts like Girl Gone Bad, and we do albums in their entireties, like Van Halen 1 in 1984, and we hope to see one or all of you down at a show soon. Come up and say hi. But I'll probably recognize you guys. We are local to Connecticut, but we are trying to branch out. Love the show. Thanks so much for considering maybe seeing us, and love what you guys do with all the Van Halen topics and mailbag. LOL. Take care, guys. So that's a nice letter from Jim Von Voss from the Van Halen. Jim, we'll have you on the cast at some point for sure. We can talk some Halen. Dave, you had a great time at the show. Dave gave you a nice review in the earlier part of this conversation. Unfortunately, he's asleep right now. So oh, he woke up then.
No, I did. I literally came up to him and said hello.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah, no, great guy, great show. Like I said, I strongly recommend him. And yeah, they play a long time. They did great. I'd recommend him to anybody. Go see him.
Yeah. And just want to note a couple of things that came out that Dave highlighted to me on vhlinks.com real quick. The 2000 sessions apparently one of the songs in that mix was Up for Breakfast, which I thought was an interesting tidbit. And apparently 3 of the songs that David Lee Roth worked on in 1985, when he was working on the album after 1984, was Good Enough, Summer Nights, and Sucker in a Three-Piece. Now, I knew Good Enough and Summer Nights, but I never heard Sucker in a Three-Piece, and I never heard about Up for Breakfast. So those are interesting revelations. What did you think of those, Dave?
Yeah, I always love those little tidbits. Yeah. You know, and they just like come out of nowhere on some random conversation. So you really have to dig deep. But it just shows, there's always a few people who know quite a bit about the band. You never know what kind of cool tidbits you're going to find. And VH Links is... You have to go digging, but you'll find those tidbits.
Right.
And we're more than happy to bring them to you, our faithful listeners.
That's
so
right.
You don't have to go digging.
That's right. Well, speaking of happy, Dave's going to be thrilled because this is the last letter of the evening, letter number 27, and we don't even have the man's name who wrote this letter. He says here, thank you for another great episode. To answer a question you had in the mailbag regarding a death cage match between Dave and Sammy, Dave trained with Benny the Jet Urquidez, and Benny the Jet had said, David Lee Roth trained with me for years, and I'm flattered that Van Halen's hit Jump was inspired by me and my teachings. A week after Jump went gold, Dave appeared one night at my doorstep and gifted me with the band's gold record plaque. He is an excellent martial artist, super intelligent, and more importantly, a fine person. I would have to go with Dave, but who knows? Well, perhaps David Lee Roth would win that battle. But I am afraid to tip that off because I feel like Josh Coble is going to give me shit for making that obvious revelation.
Well, maybe Josh can write in next time and say who would win in the death match.
Exactly.
Would it be Dave or Sammy? Since we're biased.
That's right. And you know what? To be honest with you, Josh, Sammy could buy them all. He's worth more than everybody put together.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's true.
Well, that wraps up the mailbag segment. And we are on to our interview with photographer extraordinaire Mark Weissguy Weiss, who has a brand new book out, The Decade That Rocked. And it's filled with Van Halen photos in there, and he's had a long-standing relationship with the band. We get into all details about that, and that's all coming up next. Take a listen.
There's a lot of enthusiasm out there. I think people want to participate in rock and roll a little bit more than usual when they come to see Van Halen. And I think our audience has the same thing that I always look for in people is 3 qualities. That's a sense of humor, and that's a certain kind of passion, and a whole lot of fury.
Author Greg Renoff is back with a new book, Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music. The new biography of the record producer Ted Templeman, who went on to produce Van Halen, the Doobie Brothers, Van Morrison, Aerosmith, Sammy Hagar, and more. The book, which runs $19.95, and it's currently available at Amazon.com. From the man who brought you Van Halen Rising comes Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music, written by Templeman as told to Greg Renoff. Available for only $19.95 at Amazon.com. Order it today.
Hey, this is John 5, and you're listening to Dave and Dave Unchained.
If you would like to send us a letter asking a question or making a statement or whatever you'd like to say, you can send it to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
You know, I'm always the guy that says never say never, but, right now I'm just having fun doing what I'm doing, and if it happens, it'll happen. I'm obviously open to it if something happens with it, but, next year, I guess, is the 40th anniversary of our first album, so who knows?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an incredible guest this evening. He is one of the premier rock photographers. He has shot all the bands that we love. Motley Crue, from Bon Jovi, to Skid Row, Cinderella, Dokken, Metallica, Twisted Sister, and of course, our favorite Van Halen. Please welcome Mark Weiss. Excellent.
How you doing, Dave?
Awesome, man. It's great to have you. Mark is one of the premier photographers. I am 50 years old myself, so is Dave. So we grew up seeing all his photos that were on my wall from Circus Magazine and Faces Magazine and all the incredible pictures that he's shot. He has a brand new book out called The Decade That Rocked. It is a monstrous coffee table book that is so worth getting because it really has eye-popping photos through the years that you'll remember from the magazine, and then also ones that you haven't seen before. Really captured the spirit of so many of these incredible rock bands. Mark, it's great to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thanks, Dave and Dave.
Awesome, man. So tell us, how long have you been working on this book? I can imagine that this is like a lifetime of work for you.
I signed the contract with the publishing company 7 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But it took a turn after 2 years because at first I didn't want to commit to like a book the way it turned out because it's just too much. I couldn't imagine. I haven't done a book before, so I wanted to just do a quick feel good book. So I was just going to do a book on like hair bands, and just shoot from 1985 to 1986, grab pictures from that era where
Sure.
everyone had the most hairspray, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
But then as I was reaching the end of it and we were looking at it, it's like, do I really want this to be my, my first book out? And then I decided to change the table a little bit. And then I said I wanted to be about me, my life, narrative, tell the stories and then commit to it. So I just kind of I just figured it was time to do it that way for my first book and then have the fun, feel good books afterwards. Maybe do a book on just Van Halen or just Motley Crue or just Ozzy.
Sure.
Those are easy ones, but this one was a hard one, and it took 5 years. It took 5 years.
That's incredible.
Was the publisher okay with you switching gears, or were they like, "Oh man, come on, what are we waiting for? We want a book."
Yeah, they wanted a book, they wanted a book. But, I stuck to my guns, and I stuck to my guns throughout this whole 5-year process because it took a couple different directions regarding design and things like that. So, I really wanted it to be perfect. I figured, if they wanted to find someone else to do a similar book, then let them go ahead and do it. But I'm doing mine my way. And we actually had a good back and forth relationship, and it ended up where we're both almost 99.9 where we wanted it to be on both ends.
Sure. Now, when did you first meet and shoot Van Halen?
I just started doing assignments for Circus Magazine, and this is 1979, and they were playing Convention Hall in Asbury Park, and they were the headlining. They were doing, theaters. It was about a 3,000 to 5,000 seater, and there was the buzz going on. Of course, they weren't doing arenas yet, but I was working for Circus, and they were starting to get in there, and I got the red carpet because I was working for Circus Magazine, and so I got in there a little early for sound check to see if I can get some backstage photos. Went backstage and I met the guys and shot, did a couple shots. Actually, the photo in the book is the one of Eddie backstage my first time I said hello to him, and he just smiled and I took a picture.
That's great. That's great. That's incredible. What was your initial impression of the guys?
Just party rock and roll, flamboyant, good. I liked it. There was tons of girls in the audience, so that was always good for a single guy.
Right, of course.
I'm still a teenager at the time too.
Right, sure, absolutely. And in terms of David Lee Roth, was he sort of the perfect subject for a photographer like yourself? He's a good-looking guy. He's built like an action figure. He's colorful. He's full of action. Was he sort of a perfect subject?
Yeah, he hit the nail on the head. He was a perfect subject. He's like the epitome of a rock star. It's like you take Robert Plant and you shine him up a little bit, and you got David Lee Roth.
That's right, yeah. So what was your relationship?
Don't tell Robert Plant that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Roth wasn't the real deal, but Plant was he was down and dirty and raw, and Roth was just polished. You know what I mean?
Right,
he just took a little bit of everything, but he was the rock star.
Sure.
Did you click with Dave and the rest of the band for that matter right away, or were they very guarded and did not let you in the inner sanctum for a while until they trusted you?
Well, the first was really brief. And the thing is, they looked at me as someone in their same age, a little younger because of Circus. And then when the Circus magazine came out, it was a centerfold of the three of them. It was Michael, David and Eddie. So it wasn't like it was just David Roth, or it wasn't just Eddie, it wasn't Michael. It was like all three of them, and it was a killer photo. They saw it, and then there's other photos in there that they liked. So, that was a good introduction, of course, to meet a band by showing them like some killer photos in a magazine that's as big as Circus. When the next tour came around, the 80s Invasion, I